Hello, I'm Mabel Jong, reporting for the World Healthcare Congress 2021. Thanks so much for joining us. More than 20 years ago, a small group of scientists in Boulder, Colorado founded the company Somalogic with the stated purpose of developing a technology that would make measuring thousands of human proteins as straightforward as sequencing thousands of human genes. The reasoning was that proteins were the real-time stuff of life. Dr. Stephen Williams is the Chief Medical Officer at Somalogic. Thank you so much for your time, Dr. Williams.
Welcome. Good to be here.
Now, did your real world discoveries of the present match the 20-year-old theories?
Well, maybe the weird thing is that the vision that Larry Gold, our founder, had actually turned out to be true. This idea that proteins and protein networks in our bodies are actually an information system, that they've evolved to carry communications around different biological systems. You know, they're the targets of nearly all known drugs. It was the circumstantial evidence that proteins were like the body's internet was pretty strong. But
Mhm.
what we didn't really know was, well, could we actually intercept those signals? Could we decode them? And could we relate them to things that are meaningful in medical care and in people's lives? And that's what I've been with the company about 12 years, and that's what I've spent the last 12 years doing.
And a lot of that time has been spent on a test using machine learning, and it's a proteomic test. Now, how does that test differ from what we're already using in diagnostics?
Well, one of the key differences is that before we start, we don't know which protein or proteins are actually going to carry the signal we're interested in. So what we've really done is we've turned this usual discovery process around. Usually, people spend years or decades understanding what the physiology of one or two proteins is. And then they take them to the clinic and they ask the question, are these going to be useful in the clinic? Do they actually prognose disease or diagnose disease in a useful way? And what we did was to turn that around and say, what is the diagnosis that we need? Or what is the prognosis that we need? And the way we find out if a protein network can answer that question is we run thousands or sometimes tens of thousands of samples where that clinical outcome is known. So there's a truth standard for this thing that we're trying to predict. And it's associated with samples that we can collect from large biobanks, so it's already known. And our task then, by measuring thousands of proteins, the task is to find out to decode what proteins are the best predictors of that clinical truth. And until the evolution of high-powered computing and machine learning, we, myself included, had little lists of our favorite proteins and we're trying to check them off. But what machine learning does is it can look in multi-dimensional space. It can look not just at individual proteins, but at networks of proteins, and it can really ask the question, how many proteins in what relationship are the best predictors of this clinical truth? So that's the process. We define the truth we want first. We find a large scale study, a biobank study or a natural history study with that truth in that has samples. We run all the samples. We use machine learning to find the pattern. And then once we've found the pattern, we can turn it into a piece of software that now we can apply to a general population.
Okay. What health organizations are investing or have the confidence to invest in this truth that you are clearly so passionate about? Are we seeing a widespread use of these tests right now?
I mean, the first use has been in collaborations with the pharmaceutical industry. They're useful. They find the tests useful in characterizing the participants in the clinical trials and finding out what the drugs are doing to those participants. So they tend to be early adopters. The other early adopters are integrative physicians and concierge physicians. They tend to have a holistic view of the patient. And because we have quite a wide number of tests, all the way from predicting are you going to die of a cardiovascular event to are you drinking too much alcohol? The integrative physicians like that holistic view the most. So they were early adopters within healthcare. But having said that, at the moment we've got quite a number of collaborations under discussion with large health systems that you would recognize. But because we haven't signed the agreements and done our press releases with them, I can't say
Sure.
who they would be.
Now, approximately how many test results can you deliver to a patient or a clinician from a single blood sample?
At the moment, we measure 7,000 proteins,
Yes.
but it would be pretty useless if I measured your blood and gave you a list of 7,000 proteins. That would be useless.
Hmm.
So what you need is an interpretable, actionable result. Am I going to die of a cardiovascular death? Have I got too much fat in my liver? And at the moment, we've got 12 tests that are already available for medical management as laboratory developed tests, and another 4, the liquid liver biopsy, that are used in clinical research for drug development. So that's 16 out at the moment. And then we have a rich pipeline of a large number of follow-on tests. It's really unlimited because you know how many different patterns are there within our human physiology. I don't know what the upper limit of that might be. So the real question is, you know, how many studies with good truth standards for medical state or behavior or outcomes can we find in order to create these actionable tests? I don't think I can predict a limit at the moment. It's you know.
I should ask though, we have heard this before. We have heard other companies, I won't name them specifically, but they have also promised a lot of results from a single drop of blood. So are you finding some cynicism in your science at the moment as to why this is relevant?
I should have been wearing a black polo neck today instead of a blue one, shouldn't I?
Perhaps.
Yes, we're aware that the landscape you could look at it as slightly contaminated by the false claims that others have made. And to us, that's a bit of a double-edged sword because it's easy for us to say we're not them. And the reason it's easy is because we have over 200 peer-reviewed publications. You know, some of them come from us, but many come from world-leading, you know, key opinion leaders in recognized academic institutions. And so we think that the level of the weight of evidence and the level of evidence out there that's credible for our technology is far beyond, far exceeds what we saw from those false claims.
Okay. The advances in your sector is really the key trend driving the growth of the molecular diagnostics market. Where do you see the work of Somalogic heading in the next few years? I mean, you've come a long way in 20 years. What's around the corner? How common will this become?
So I think the enabling academics and pharma companies to characterize human biology and really to tease out what drugs are doing. I think there's going to be a major expansion in the life sciences tool side of it. But also within the healthcare side, we're developing these tests, and we think in collaboration with health systems, we'll develop more tests. So we think that the adoption within healthcare will take a little bit longer because I think healthcare is relatively conservative in terms of adoption and reimbursement for new tests. But I think that's where it will go. And then as we are able to make the technology more distributed, and as we're able to reduce the cost of doing it, we think that, you know, eventually we're hoping to go into direct to consumer markets. But for now, we're focusing on life sciences, enablers of discoveries by others, and the healthcare markets for the tests that we develop, and enabling our collaborators in the healthcare arena to develop their own tests.
All right. Well, Dr. Stephen Williams, exciting stuff. Very interesting. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you very much.
I've been speaking with Dr. Stephen Williams, the Chief Medical Officer of Somalogic. I'm Mabel Jong. Thanks for watching coverage of the World Healthcare Congress 2021.